All right, what a weekend for college football. What a weekend to be alive. Game day is in Lawrence, Kansas. But man, this one just doesn't feel right because Lee Corso is not there to put on the Jayhawks mascot. And I'm a little sad. I'm hoping they do something for that because for it being the first time in Lawrence. And, yeah. What's your thoughts on that, Ty?
Well, I wondered, like, couldn't you do the same thing that happened during COVID? And I know it's not personal, and it sucked to see it then, right? Where you had college game day still doing their thing and Lee Corso streaming in because of his age. But at this point, couldn't you do the same thing where, like, just the picks? Now that's assuming he's of health to be able to do that. Hopefully he's all right. But like, if he was able to, I think that'd be something to kind of bridge the gap of not having Lee Corso for a while. But you're right. This is who would have thought that on the day of the Red River rivalry, the game with the biggest implications in the Big 12 would be TCU versus Kansas.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that people are overlooking with this Kansas team because they
Yeah.
see a Kansas team that has historically struggled, had 0 wins actually in 2020, didn't win a game. And, they see this Kansas team and they go, oh, are they for real? Well, let me tell you this.
They're
They got
for
a
real.
quarterback in Jalen Daniels who stepped onto this team and is a Heisman candidate quarterback right now. I think he's first in the FBS and QBR. Kansas has played real teams. They've
Just
played
shy of a
Houston.
73% completion percentage. Think about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, no, I mean, this Kansas team is as legit as they come. And when we talk about, oh, well, can Kansas win the Big 12? You really have to sit back and think, oh, there is a chance this Kansas team really can. Because, and here's some reasons why. So we talked about Jalen Daniels, who is the Heisman finalist or could be a Heisman finalist. You have a running back in Devin Neal, who actually I think is pretty good. When you watch him, he's kind of like Bijan Robinson, where he can make people miss. And then this offensive line for Kansas is incredible, only allowing 2 sacks through 5 games. Like, that's incredible to think a program like Kansas can have that good of an offensive line and to have that good of a turnaround off of the seasons where you haven't had great seasons, so you're not getting the best recruits. Now, they're maybe giving up a little more on defense than what you would like, but they look like what we've seen with Oklahoma, where over the past couple of years, Oklahoma's just been able to outscore everybody, and Kansas is doing that same thing. And I know people will try to say they haven't played anybody. Listen, they
Well,
played a West Virginia team with JT Daniels at West Virginia. They played Houston at Houston. And then they played a 4-0 Duke team at the time, and they won that one by 8 points. And then Iowa State at home, a convincing team, a team that, is pretty dang good year in and year out in the Big 12.
And the thing that I don't get, ma'am, is it's one thing, the argument of you don't play anybody, I hear it, like that's cool. I don't think it's an argument that doesn't deserve any merit, right? The problem is the question I ask once that argument is presented is, okay, well, have they looked really good while not playing anybody? And if the answer to that is yes, then isn't it equally logical that they haven't played anybody and they're a good team? Right? Because we're so quick to say, oh, well, because you haven't played anybody, you're not a good team. That's not what that means. You could have not played people and still be a very good team. Now, I side with you. They played West Virginia. I'm not saying West Virginia is a world beater. West Virginia is not going to lay down, right?
At West Virginia.
Yeah, they're not going to just lay down. Then they played Iowa State. Like, when you look at the teams they've played, they haven't just played nobodies. Yeah. I think the people saying they haven't played anybody haven't taken a look at their schedule. Now, the question for me is, can they stop this TCU offense? Like you said, their defense isn't good. It's 79th in the nation in total defense, which, let's be honest, that's not going to win you a national championship. But at the same time, we're now talking about overblown expectations for a program. We need to look at this through the lens of this is Kansas. Kansas has had such great strides throughout the years. If your offense is this proficient and your defense is a top 80 defense, you take that. You absolutely take that, because this is what building something looks like. Hats off to the job they've done there. And to your point about the offensive line, as great as the offensive line has played, and I am not taking anything away from them because they've been great. I think it also doubles back to Daniels, man, and just like proves what a great job he's done leading this team, because he's getting it done through the air where, to your point, he leads the nation in QBR. He's just shy of being tied with his running back for most rushing yards on the team. I mean, he's getting it done through the air, on the ground, however it need be. As good as the offensive line has been, Jalen Daniels is putting the nation on notice.
Yeah, and so is this Kansas team. And you know what? We'll just go ahead and hop into it because we're talking about it. So TCU at Kansas. TCU's favored by -7.5. They have one of the best offenses in college football, but I can make the argument that TCU hasn't played anybody, right? If people want to say that about Kansas, I can make that argument for TCU. And then they beat down an Oklahoma team that, let's be honest, has been struggling. They had a lot of injuries in that game. So it's not like they played a full strength Oklahoma team like they would in the years past. The best team they've played this season, I think, is SMU. So they're coming into a Kansas team that is going to be sold out. College game days here. Kansas fans are ready to show out. The line's at 7.5. Honestly, I think Kansas is probably going to win this by 14 points. What's your thoughts here?
Man, This is of all the games this week, when we're talking picks, this is going to be the toughest for me. Here's the reason why. Because as much as I love Kansas, I have to look at this and say, okay, well, what does TCU do well? They do a lot well offensively. And if we're talking about their wide receivers, they have got a lot of guys that are just straight up mismatches, right? They have Barber. Is it Barber or is it Tarber? Barber. It's Barber. It's Tay Barber. He is a straight up mismatch, first and foremost. Then outside of him, you have Darius Davis, the 6'5" dude who's probably going to be a first round pick this year, and Max Duggan leading the charge. So you have to respect what TCU brings to the table offensively. I think whenever I look at Kansas, though, they're such a sound football team. On offense, they don't do anything to lose the game. They only generate positive plays. I'm going to take Kansas to remain undefeated and win this game, even though part of me is saying, hey, TCU has got something for them. The emotional fan in me is saying Kansas is going to capture the momentum and they're going to win by 7.
Here's the thing about this, and you forgot about Quentin Johnson, the 6'4" wide receiver out there at TCU too. He's a Hoss Johnson. But here's the thing. Kansas is riding the momentum, but TCU is coming off a very emotional victory versus Oklahoma, right? They beat them down. Fans stormed the field. And I definitely think that's probably bad for them going into this week to go into Lawrence and play an undefeated Kansas team.
I said Darius Davis. I meant Quentin Johnson as the first round wide receiver. Darius Davis is another weapon they have that is just as dangerous as can be. But proving my point, right? TCU's wide receiving core is probably one that a little bit people like myself overlooked a little bit coming into this year into just how elite they can be. Sorry to interrupt you there. I just looked and was like, I said the wrong name.
Yeah, no. And, you're talking about how elite that wide receiving core is. And there is one secret weapon that TCU has, and it is Lincoln Riley's brother.
Yeah.
And I know it's not Lincoln Riley, but you know that they both have to be sharing secrets with each other, carrying on the Riley name. And I think TCU is going to be a top tier team in the Big 12. And ultimately, when Oklahoma and Texas leaves, you could see TCU trying to cement themselves as one of those top teams, assuming that Sonny Dykes is able to keep that Riley guy there. Because listen, with the mindset of Sonny Dykes and the Riley brother there together on offense, all you have to do is hire a good defensive coordinator, and you have what Oklahoma should have had, because I have no doubt in my mind with the two of those guys, they can equal up to be a Lincoln Riley. And so you just got to go out there and get yourself a good defensive coordinator, like what Texas has done with Sark and Gary Patterson.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you look at, and I love this point you made, man. I absolutely love the point you make here, because there is a much larger point to be talked about, and you're shining a light on it. And that's the future. Whenever Oklahoma and Texas leave the Big 12, yes, you have big brands coming in. I think that the 4 teams the Big 12 got to come in, I know a lot of people have been kind of mum on it. I think they did a great job salvaging their conference. When you look at UCF, that's a major brand in Florida. The student population there is huge. You look at BYU. BYU is consistently a top team in college football. I'm not saying top 5, but they're always ranked, it seems like. They're always good to play you closely. They're always good to get an upset. But even if we look past what's coming in, TCU is in a position to fill this void left by Texas and Oklahoma because of their location, first and foremost. And historically, they've been an exciting team in the Big 12 over the past few seasons, right? Since 2013, moving on, it seems like we talk about Texas, we talk about Oklahoma, we talk about maybe Oklahoma State, but TCU is right there knocking on the door every single time. I love the point you make because they are a program that could be poised to surge once Oklahoma and Texas leave because of location as well.
Yeah, no, and you're right. Like they can help dominate that recruiting pipeline in Texas because it's just so rich, and
Yeah,
you can have a 3-star or 4-star guy in Texas that in any other state would be a 5-star guy, and that's just the thing with Texas, and so TCU's got it, and being the only Dallas team that I think has historically been, I mean, you got SMU, but TCU has historically been consistently good. And I think they'll carry that on as OU and Texas leave the Big 12, and you'll see them continue to be successful. But let's go ahead and let's dive into the game that Jay is at with Unfair Sports. If you guys haven't checked out his channel, you really should. But he is at the Tennessee and LSU game this week. And this one, Ty, you said it was pretty interesting, so I'm going to let you take the floor on this one.
Yeah, so it's interesting when you look at this because after LSU's loss, I think a lot of college football wrote them off and maybe haven't been paying attention. And look, LSU has had some close games. They've had some ugly wins, but they've won. It's been a team that's been trying to build something in Brian Kelly's first year. They've had some injuries, but one thing we need to understand, LSU is LSU. They're always going to have talent. Louisiana is an incredibly talent-rich state. They are the dominating brand within the state. They're going to attract the talent. They take on Tennessee, and I think it's easy for people to sit there and say, oh, Tennessee's got this in the bag. They're going to kill them. But look at the line right there on the screen. Tennessee is not some overwhelming favorite in this game, right? Like Vegas sees something. Now, I don't know that I would put it as a 3-point game, right? But my question for LSU is how are you going to slow down Hendon Hooker? Hendon Hooker has been playing like a man inspired right now, and slowing him down is going to be paramount. If they can't do that, I don't believe in LSU's offense being able to consistently generate the yardage and the opportunity necessary to hang with Tennessee's offense. Now, that being said, I don't know who Tennessee's defense truly is just yet, but that's why I'm so excited for today, Preston, because I think today, look, no matter where we put LSU right now, I think they're going to try and do some things to at least show us a clearer picture as to who Tennessee is. So that's why I think this is so great. Now, before I let you go, to your point about how loaded Texas is, they have 54 players in the 24/7 top 300 player composite. The number 55 is number 303 in the nation. That's how loaded the state of Texas is. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. And you kind of talked about it. Hendon Hooker for Tennessee. How are you going to be able to slow him down? And, I came into the season, a lot of people were talking about him, and I just wasn't completely sold. But the man has a 71 completion percentage. He has 8 touchdowns. Here's the key. 0 interceptions.
Yeah.
And there's actually quite a few people that have stats like that. In the last game we didn't talk about, Max Duggan has 11 touchdowns and 0 interceptions.
Yeah.
When your quarterback doesn't go out there and he doesn't make mistakes, that is the key to a successful winning football program. And the thing is, I feel like we know who Tennessee is because Tennessee played at Pitt when they were number 17. And then they played Florida. And then they played Akron, who, Akron has historically been a team that can give people problems at times. And that's honestly a team that Tennessee would historically struggle with. But they went out and dominated them 63-6. And they went out and beat a Florida team at home 38-33. If they can go out, beat LSU in Death Valley, there's a potential that this game versus Alabama next week has major potentials to help decide of where the SEC is going to go in terms of the championship game, because Alabama might have to rush Bryce Young back a little bit faster than they might want to, especially since this game is in Knoxville. Ultimately, I think Tennessee's offense with Josh Heupel at the helm, as the head coach, probably calling those offensive plays, is going to be too much for LSU to handle. I'm still not sold on whether Jaden Daniels is going to be able to get it done for LSU. LSU does have a good defense, though, so it's going to be interesting to see just how Tennessee is able to match up against a team that can actually potentially stop their high-powered offense. But if Tennessee comes out this game and they just blow out LSU's defense, I think there's going to be a lot of intriguing notions around this game next week with Tennessee and Alabama.
No doubt. And when I say we're going to learn about who Tennessee is, I'm speaking specifically to defense, because we know that Josh Heupel and the Tennessee Volunteers are emerging within the SEC. I think that poses a few questions, though. First and foremost, have you wrinkled out all of the little kinks it takes on your way to the path to success? And what I mean when I ask that, are you going to win the games you should win in the manner you should win them? It's not always going to happen. We know what college football is. The unexpected is to be expected. But at the end of the day, where are you in the building blocks of your program? Now, one thing we do know about Tennessee right now, even having asked that question, is that they're very close. How close this season's going to be huge in determining. They're recruiting at a high level. The offense is playing as well as any offense in the nation. In fact, I think it's the number one passing offense, the number two passing offense in the nation. If not, Washington is number one. I know they're very highly rated offensively. Defense, I still think there's some things they'd like to shore up. And when I say I want to know who they are, I think that they have the ability to be better defensively, but that's what I'm interested in seeing is, are you going to be able to be a super balanced team, or are you going to be a team that's more reliant on the offense? I don't know that LSU has the offense to necessarily test them in all of those ways, but I do think we're going to see them try and get some things done that will give us a clear indication as to where this Tennessee defense is heading into a big game against Alabama.
Yeah, and Tennessee, they're number one in total offense, number one in passing, and they're a top 30 team in total rushing on the offense. So, Tennessee's definitely a team that, you know what they kind of remind me of? They kind of remind me of these Oklahoma teams of the past 5 or 6 years where they have a really good offense, but we're not sold on their defense.
And the defense isn't bad. But this is the thing. If the defense was bad, I'd have the answer to my question. Right? That, okay, you just don't have a very good defense. That is not the situation at all. I don't look at them and say, oh, well, you have a world-beating defense. You have a defense that is going. I don't know exactly who your defense is. That's what I'm interested in figuring out, because I know who the offense is. This is the interesting thing in college football, man, is sometimes you'll have these defenses where they're absolutely not a bad defense. I think they're a top 60 defense in the nation.
Oh, no. Tennessee's given up 405 yards. And this is the argument I would make to that. They're a 405-yard given up. So they give up 405 yards a game, and they allowed Anthony Richardson to get 2 passing touchdowns. And Anthony Richardson, before that game, couldn't get a passing touchdown to save his life.
Oh, no, I had rushing defense up. Gotcha. No, they are, they rank 94th in total defense. Yeah. So, okay. This isn't a very good defense, right?
Yeah, their rushing defense is only allowing 97, which is probably one of the top rushing defenses in the country.
I had the rushing defense if that's pulled up. Gotcha.
That tells you that Tennessee's probably got a good, a front line, but outside of that, when it comes to the passing, they're allowing 309 yards through the air.
Well, then that just goes and reinforces my point. Who are you? You know what I mean? Like you got to establish some sort of consistency and identity in that aspect as well.
Yeah, no, you definitely have to. Like you said, we're going to find out a lot about what Tennessee is, because LSU is going to be able to put up a fight with a Jaden Daniels quarterback who we think can sling the ball, but we know that he can put it on the ground and run it as well. As so far this season, he's got 60 carries for 321 yards and 3 touchdowns. So we know he's going to be able to put it on the ground and cause problems for Tennessee there. So we'll be able to see what they're going to look like, because if they have to go up against Milroe or Bryce Young against Alabama, both of those quarterbacks can run the ball better than Jaden Daniels can. So we'll see definitely what they're going to be in this game. It's going to be one to watch. A game that I don't have on the slate, but I feel like everybody should be paying attention to is this Iowa versus Illinois game.
Okay.
Because Iowa's defense, I mean,
It's
let's just be
good.
honest. Every single year, it's one of those defenses you look at and just go, wow. Like if they had an offense or a halfway competent offense, there's a chance they could go compete for it every year.
Yeah,
Right
their defense
now,
is great.
yeah, right now Illinois is favored by -3.5 in this game. But they have probably right now one of the best running backs in the country in Chase Brown, who has 123 carries for 733 yards and 4 touchdowns. Now, do I think he's better than Deuce Vaughn and Muhammad Ibrahim, in my opinion? No. But statistically, he is one of the best in the country. And I'm really curious to see because this Illinois team is turning it around this year. They're 4-1. They've got a running back there that is just taking the league and the country by storm. They beat Wisconsin last week at Wisconsin, 34-10. This game intrigues me a little bit. What do you think about this one?
You want to know what's interesting about this? We talked about Iowa's defense. Iowa's defense and total defense ranked 7th in the nation.
Mm-hmm.
Illinois, they rank 3rd in total defense. They're one ahead of Alabama, who sits 4th. Ironically, Bama, if I'm not mistaken, a few days ago, I checked, they're 4th on defense, 4th on offense. I was like, okay, great. So we're consistently 4th. That's fantastic. But point being, like, I agree with you, man. I think that for as much attention as I think the general media is going to give Iowa, because I don't think that anybody really talks about Illinois football. And to your point, right? Like you're talking about this running back who college football should know by name. I guarantee 75% of the fan base hasn't ever heard of him. Not Illinois' fan base. I mean, the general college football fan hasn't ever heard of the guy. I like Illinois to win this game. I think they're a team that's emerging. The defense is there. I have no threat of Iowa's offense. You could be the 70th ranked defense, and I would still be like, okay, well, you might as well be a top 10 ranked defense against Iowa's offense. Like, it's just not there. It is. I don't know. Do they pull up to the game with like 30 linebackers and DBs and stuff and just let Jesus take the wheel and rely on intercept? I don't know. I'm being funny, but at the same time, like the offense isn't there. So it wouldn't be any different to me whether Illinois was a top 10 ranked defense. If they were a top 20 ranked defense, top 30, you're playing an offense that has no semblance of an identity.
Yeah, no. And I'm looking at the defensive stats on ESPN right now. You want to know something that's interesting here? Both teams who have, I think right now, probably your Heisman frontrunners for the running back position, Illinois and Minnesota, both are 1 and 2 in defensive leaders in total points per game, and then 2 and 3 in yards allowed a game on defense.
Yeah.
Number 1 is James Madison Dukes, which
JMU.
I'm sorry, James Madison's going to get poached in the transfer portal this year.
Oh,
But
God,
it's
yeah.
just it's just impressive. And it's interesting to see how both Minnesota and Illinois have been so successful this season with these great defenses, but then also have really successful running games.
Yeah.
Right? Because when you're able to establish the running game, it opens up the passing game and everything becomes easier on offense. So Hank pointed out here, Illinois can really prove something if they can run on that defense. And like I said, I'm curious to watch it. I think it's a game a lot of people should be paying attention to because there's a lot of implications out there for the East right now in the Big Ten. It's definitely up in the air because Wisconsin's probably not going to win it. No. And it could definitely come down between a Minnesota team or is Illinois in the East? I don't know if they're in the East or not, but they definitely have Yeah, they definitely. It's the East side is probably the most intriguing side to me because on the other side you just pretty much have Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State going at it. So, but the other side I think is probably 3 or 4 teams deep. But
no, Illinois is in the West.
Oh, Illinois is in the West. Okay, so now the West is probably the most intriguing
they have
part.
to love their positioning.
Yeah, now they're probably not going to be able to overturn an Ohio State or Michigan team. But
Ohio State and Michigan, we had it backwards. Ohio State and Michigan are in the East.
Oh, okay. So it's the West that's the easier side.
The Nebraska, Purdue, Illinois, Minnesota, Iowa, Northwestern, Wisconsin.
All right. Well,
and interesting stat right now, Nebraska is the conference leader in the West.
Nebraska hasn't lost a conference game since their coaching turnover.
Yeah. I mean, that won't last, but it's just funny to me, man. It's just funny.
Yeah. Let's stay in the Big Ten, though. And let's talk about this Michigan at Indiana game. And here's why this one is so important. We are now in conference play. And there's been a lot of talk about this Michigan team. Everybody knows how high I am on them because I picked them to go to the college football playoffs again this year. I really liked what they were returning on the offensive line. I thought they were returning some good defensive starters. Additionally, you brought a guy back in Blake Corum who played really well at the running back position last year. And you're returning both quarterbacks, and you had a really intriguing quarterback battle. One in Cade McNamara, who you know is not going to turn the ball over, and JJ McCarthy, who might be a little bit more risky. However, though, we thought that at the beginning of the season, and JJ McCarthy has actually been the quarterback that has been a little bit more reserved and not wanting to turn the ball over this season. JJ McCarthy has ultimately been named the starter out there in Michigan. And I think the offense flows a million times better with him reigning the helms out there for Michigan. The question is Michigan going to be able to beat Ohio State this year with I think you could make the argument, a slightly less talented team, and with Ohio State just putting their foot on the gas pedal as they start to go through the season? Michigan's defense is one of the top defenses in the country, and their offense is extremely balanced, putting up about 234 passing yards a game and 221 rushing yards a game. Blake Corum is a dude that could potentially go out there and compete for that Heisman. JJ McCarthy is more than a serviceable quarterback for Michigan. The line's at 22.5 in this game. And I think this is important because if Michigan goes out there and covers against an Indiana team that personally I don't think is someone that you want to necessarily play in the Big Ten, like they can go out there and beat anybody any given Saturday in the Big Ten. If Michigan can go out there and cover this game or just completely just annihilate them, I think we got to start looking at Michigan and putting them in the top 4 over a Clemson or somebody else so far in the AP rankings. What do you think about this game?
I think Michigan should be in the top 4. To be completely honest with you, yeah, I 100% agree with you in that. Michigan is a team that has looked good this year. Any questions we've had, while I don't know that they've answered all questions, they've shown an ability to at least present a theory of answering the question, which at this point in the season, it's not early season. We're about halfway through. That's what you can ask for, right? When I look at Michigan's offense, they're sound. JJ McCarthy is 100% the dude there. The running back play they have remains phenomenal, coming off of last season where the running back play was phenomenal. Defense ranks 6th in the nation in total defense. Look, I think they cruise past Indiana. I don't think that this game right here should be much of a question. To your point, Indiana can upset you. I do agree with that. But look, if Michigan is where they need to be, and it's not even about winning a college football playoff game, right? It's about, can you consistently be the team that when we talk about the Big Ten, we have to have a debate. Is it going to be Ohio State or is it going to be Michigan? Because over the past, 10 years before this? I mean, there really hasn't been that much of a debate. Ohio State has been the clear-cut favorite in that division for quite some time. And Michigan just needs to get to a point where they can challenge Ohio State in that regard. So it starts today. Josh Pate, always unbelievable at his job. I mean, the best. He said
Tune into his podcast. Tune into his show is incredible. He had Alabama fans rooting for Auburn on Friday. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, that'll never happen. But never. But what he said a while back has always resonated with me. And he's like, the difference between a good team and a great team is not by how you win the close games. It's how much you win the games that you have no business being in a close game, right? Like this game right here. On paper, Michigan should handle Indiana. If you're as close as you want to be, Michigan will go out there and handle Indiana, right? And yes, it might be to where you face some adversity. How do you respond to that adversity, right? Questions can be answered, but do I think Michigan can contend with Ohio State, answering the grander question here? Yeah, I do. because Michigan's got a top 10 defense. Ohio State's got a top 10 defense, but I can't wait for that matchup. That's a game I'm looking forward to almost more than any in college football as we currently speak, is the Ohio State-Michigan matchup. That's a game I got to get to. That's a bucket list game for me.
It is for me too. I want to go to Michigan and Ohio State to watch that game. It's that, and I want to go to Alabama and Auburn. Those are some bucket list games for me. I think those are going to be incredible atmospheres.
The horseshoe is wild, man. So I was there. We had a moot court tournament at a university just outside of Columbus, but after that got done, the Ohio State Dean of Law School, he contacted the University of North Texas, my professors there, and they wanted to talk to the moot court team. So we went to Ohio State's campus and toured it. And when we were there, they were playing Penn State. And I'll never forget, as kickoff happened, we're walking by the stadium, and the dean of the law school is walking us to where we're getting picked up by the Uber, and he's about to head into the stadium. Well, kicking off that year, this is when Saquon was there, you heard the stadium just going crazy. They were so hyped. Kickoff happens, Saquon gets the ball, and as he's returning it, getting closer to the end zone, you can hear the crowd noise just start going down and down and down until it was silent. And that's how you knew Saquon had just scored a 102-yard kickoff return. And I was irate that I couldn't be at that game, just beside myself.
Yeah, it's a different. I'm going to be honest. Big Ten games, I think, are a different animal because of the size of their stadiums and what they're able to put up. Let's talk about a game that I think could be a different animal this year. Auburn at Georgia. Currently, Georgia's favored by 28. And I just want everybody to know, I pulled these lines like 30 minutes ago, and these lines are ever changing. People are putting money on these games like crazy. And I completely spelled Auburn wrong on there. That's okay, though.
Auburn's going to get run out the building by Georgia. That's what's going to happen. That's where your mind was, is that Auburn is going to get run out the building by Georgia. They can't stop Georgia. I'm sorry. They can't stop them. Is
this the game where Auburn fires their head coach?
That's as good as anybody's guess, man. Because the whole Brian Harsin situation is, I mean, there could be a 30 for 30 on it, right? And I don't know a lot of what's gone on. I've heard rumors. I've heard whispers. I've been told, oh, this. I don't know what is simply a rumor and what's the truth, right? So that I'm not speaking on that. But I think that even the most casual observer can tell you that it seems like Auburn wants him gone. I mean, when you look at this PG, he's the only one left. Didn't they fire the AD's gone, right? Like everybody's gone. It's just him. It's only a matter of time before he's gone. It's only a matter of time. Georgia is going to run them out the building, especially because people have been asking questions about Georgia, and this is an SEC opponent. Kirby's a little bit like Nick now. You get that bad press out there, and he wants to make an example out of somebody. It's going to be Auburn.
All right. I ain't got nothing to say on that one. Ty said it all. But let's get into Ty's game right here, because I know Ty just wants to talk about it, and I'm not even going to say anything. I'm just going to let you take it away.
Yeah, so we got the battle of the backups right now, or that's how it's looking. Jalen Milroe versus Haynes King. And I talked about, I think that Bama's offense has got clear paths to success with Jalen Milroe in at quarterback. First and foremost, Bama's offense is already a ferocious rushing attack up to this point in the season. Now you add in Jalen Milroe, that's even more you have to account for. Now, when I said that, everybody came into the comments and they were like, well, they'll just stack the box. They'll put a safety in the box. But that gets me into my second reason. And I pray you put a safety in the box. Please do. Pray do. Because of the personnel. When I look at the personnel for Alabama, Preston, whenever I look at new quarterbacks, there's two areas I look on for an offense, right? Outside the offensive line. How successful are you going to be? How good your running back play? What's your tight end room looking like? Those two areas right there can be a new quarterback's best friend at generating easy offense. What happens when you generate easy offense? You put a defense in a position they don't want to be in, and you dictate the pace of the game. Generating easy offense equals generating big offense. Jalen Milroe is more than capable. And for anybody saying he can't throw the ball, why is he at Alabama?
because he was a very accurate guy coming out of high school. I don't know why people have this mentality that Milroe can't throw the ball, but this was one of the top dual-rated quarterbacks
He's a
coming out of
top
high
100
school.
player.
Yeah, and he was slinging the ball all over the place in high school. Sorry to interrupt you, but that just gets me every time I hear it.
I completely agree. And am I saying he's Bryce Young throwing the football? No, because I can count on one hand how many Bryce Young level passers I've seen over the past few years, right? Like Bryce's ability as a passer and his ability to break a defense down at the line of scrimmage is wild for someone his age. Does he always get it right? No, but the fact that a junior in college is being asked to call an entire offense and all the audibles is not normal. Bryce is not normal. But Hank said it. Whenever I look at you want to put a safety in the box, we're going to squeeze Jahmyr Gibbs right outside, give it to him, and he's going to put you in such a bad position, we'll just start hitting it over your head or attempting to. It doesn't matter whether it's there or not. If we can just threaten you with the deep shot, A&M is in a bad position. Now, let's be honest here, though, because Alabama was a 20-plus point favorite last year, and A&M took it to them for 4 quarters, really 3.5 quarters, bullied them. First and foremost, A&M doesn't have that defensive line they had last year. Talented, young, inexperienced, hurt. That's where they are right now. Those are the adjectives I look at. The linebacker play isn't, I don't know that it's where you need it to be to make up for some of the injuries on the front. And as the defensive backfield goes, that's not where you want it to be either. Offensively for Texas A&M, Haynes King comes in. Haynes King is an athletic dude, was a top dual threat quarterback coming out of high school. I think the number 5 dual threat quarterback in the nation in the 2019 class whenever he came out. Top 150 player in the nation too, I believe. So highly regarded guy, turnover prone. And what is one thing we've seen out of this Bama secondary? As time has gone on, they've gotten real stingy. Whenever it's Kool-Aid and Arnold back there now, they're stingy. I think they're going to try and bait interceptions, but the dude, man, and I've said his name so much, they have got to be so aware of where A-Chain is every second he's on the field. I don't care if he's on kick return, if he goes out to wide receiver, running back, know where he is, have someone account for him because that guy is dangerous, man. Like that guy's really dangerous.
Yeah, no, you talked about it. 81 carries, 466 yards. He only does have 3 touchdowns this year, but that's just because Texas A&M can't get him in a position to score the ball.
He is the offense.
Yeah, he is their offense because they do have a 5-star quarterback in Connor Weigman back there. But as I have said it all year long, you don't really want to play a true freshman at quarterback unless you have to. We're going to get more into that later. But Max Johnson was more than serviceable for this Texas A&M offense if Jimbo Fisher would stop holding all of the papers and looking at everything with his glasses on like this on the sideline, because he looks like some 90-year-old coach out there. And I just can't believe that Jimbo can't turn over the offense. And Ty, I really do think that if they lose, a couple more games this season, we really could be talking about a potential Jimbo Fisher let go at the end of the year, because Texas A&M, they have that oil money and they can certainly figure it out. They
certainly have the money. Yeah, they have the money.
I think those boosters really have to be sitting back there and talking about it and go, there is a really good chance that Texas A&M could have been 1-4 going into this Alabama game. You won 17-9 versus Miami, a Miami team that if they would have just put together a tiny bit more offense, they would have beat Texas A&M by 2 scores. Arkansas, you lost to Arkansas on a last-minute field goal that, I don't know how you hit the top right of the field goal post, but it happens. Texas A&M is extremely bad this year. They're just bad altogether. And how they're able to still get 5-star defensive linemen is beyond me.
Elijah Robinson. Look, we can talk about NIL, and that's absolutely a factor. So when I say this statement, please don't take it as what I'm saying is, oh, this is the sole reason there's no NIL. They do have a really solid recruiter at their defensive line coach, Elijah Robinson. That dude is a menace on the recruiting trail. But outside of that name, I got nothing for you.
No, that's the thing. And here's the problem. They're going to have defensive linemen into the transfer portal this year.
Oh, God, yeah. Okay.
I definitely think Shamar Stewart's going to Miami where he wanted to go, right? I think he just sees that as a better opportunity.
He's a beast.
You could
He's
see
already so
Lebbeus
good.
you could see Lebbeus Overton and Micah Overton, or well, Micah might stay A&M, but you could definitely see Overton come to Oklahoma. And I think that's a real shot this year because Overton's going to see the opportunity he has at Oklahoma with an Oklahoma team that right now is better than Texas A&M. If they went to the field, Oklahoma would win that game by at least, 14 points. And, with the bag that Oklahoma was willing to drop for Overton, which we know Oklahoma was offering a huge bag to Overton and A&M just swooped in last minute to get him. I think Overton could definitely enter in the transfer portal and end up back here. I don't think it's far-fetched to think that Dendy could go out to USC, looking at USC's defense and what Alex Grinch was doing and who was originally recruiting him. Texas A&M, I think right now they need this game against Alabama more than any game on their schedule. Because at least if they can win this game against Alabama, they can say, hey, we beat Alabama 2 years in a row. If you come here, we're going to continue to improve. If they lose this game and get completely just annihilated in this game, it doesn't look good at all. It doesn't look good at all for their recruiting. So I think actually the line is too low. I think Bama's probably going to win this game by 38 or more points. I just don't see how Texas A&M could score enough. And I think Nick Saban and that Bama offense, they're not going to take their foot off the gas. They're going to keep it down, foot on the pedal the entire game.
Good.
But let's jump to the Pac-12 real quick. Utah.
Let's talk about this Texas OU game.
We can get to it after this Utah UCLA game. We'll finish it off with OU versus Texas because I want to get to it too. But Utah -3 at UCLA. I think this has huge implications for the Pac-12 championship game. Utah, honestly, this is pretty interesting because I think next week they got to go play USC as well. So I think so. I think it's which is going to suck for Alabama because if Utah wins it and USC wins this week, I think that game goes to College Game Day for Utah USC.
They do have USC next week. That's going to be the game.
Wow. Yeah, especially if USC is undefeated. Now, if USC drops it today, it's going to Alabama, Tennessee if Tennessee's undefeated. So, but anyways, UCLA has looked hot at some points, and then you see some points where they're celebrating a 1-point victory over South Alabama at home, right? We know it. It's hard to fill up the Rose Bowl, especially when it's not an actual Rose Bowl game and it's just UCLA playing in there. But, Utah -3, I feel like it's a little low because Utah, I feel like is just good. Yeah, they lost to Florida early in the season in the Swamp. I'd still take them to win that game. 8 out of 10 times. The Swamp is just a hard place to play, especially
and on top of that, if I may, they had the win in the bag. They were in the red zone. All they needed to do was continue the drive. They threw the ball and got it intercepted in the red zone, and there was no rhyme or reason for it. So, to your point, yeah, if we redo that game, there's a very high likelihood that Utah is undefeated right now.
Yeah, exactly. I think Utah goes into this game, wins by 10 to 14 points against UCLA. They assert their dominance in this game. USC wins it a little bit later in the night, and we have game day at this game in Utah next week. Give us your quick thoughts on this one, and we'll move to OU versus Texas.
I'm not going to lie, man. I think UCLA could spoil the party. I'm not going to lie. And you know me, man. I've been very high on Kyle Whittingham. I've been very high on Utah. I actually really enjoy watching Utah football. It's been a guilty pleasure of mine for a few years now. But UCLA's cooking with something right now. I think they're coming alive at the right moments, and I have to wonder if they have the recipe to beat Utah. Whenever I look at it, their quarterback, I think that his mobility could pose issues for the Utes in this game. And so Utah's favorite, I'm actually going to pick this as an upset. I'm taking UCLA to upset Utah.
Okay. Let's jump into it because this game's about to start. And quite honestly, I really hope we bleed over a little bit into OU's offense. Oklahoma versus Texas. This line has been everywhere, absolutely everywhere.
That was not the line when I last looked at it. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah, you know what? I got to go ahead and change it over to ABC because right now I'm still on game day with Kansas. But here's the deal. Dylan Gabriel last week got knocked out. I mean, he was out cold. Quinn
Scary.
Ewers goes down against Alabama. He has a similar situation to what it could have been with Sam Bradford in terms of coming back in this game. And don't get me wrong, this OU defensive line, I still think is really dang good. And Ethan Downs is a huge X factor this week. Huge X factor. If Ethan Downs can continue to just be as aggressive as he has been, he's going to get opportunities in this game against this Texas offensive line. Because here's the thing. I know Ethan Downs has not been impressive, but the one thing that's been impressive about Ethan Downs is every single snap, he is aggressive off the ball. Aggressive. And he is always trying to get back there. And sometimes he does, and he's chasing that quarterback. So with this Texas offensive line being as inexperienced as he is, I think he's going to have multiple or numerous opportunities to touch Quinn Ewers, however you want to look at that. But here's the thing. Dillon Gabriel all morning has been taking snaps for Oklahoma. He took primarily all of the snaps in warm-up. Now, take that for what you must. Brent Venables moved their practices indoors all week after people were starting to leak photos of Dillon Gabriel in pads on the field. You know what? If Dillon Gabriel doesn't play in this game, I think OU definitely has a low chance to win this game. If Dillon Gabriel plays in this game, my God, this game is 50-50 because you don't know what you're going to get with this Oklahoma team, and they could really just go out there and light you up on offense. And if this defense decides to come out and play like they were the first 3 games of the season, Texas is in serious trouble. Additionally, though, Texas could light up Oklahoma's defense like they did last year with a 75-yard touchdown pass from Xavier Worthy. So there's just a lot of narratives you can go. It's really hard to call this game specifically because it really could just swing either way, no matter how good or bad one team is. I know you want to talk about it, so I'm just going to give it to you.
Well, I've got a quick question for you. Do you believe OU's defense is the defense you saw the first 3 weeks, or do you believe OU's defense is the defense we've seen the past 2 weeks?
So I think it's somewhere in between, and here's why. Because they had a bad week of practice before Kansas State.
Okay.
And it got a little bit better against TCU, but honestly, that TCU game would have not been the way it was. They just didn't have all those injuries. I mean, guys, I know it's hard to make, to say, oh, well, what if? But I mean, look at all the guys that got hurt in that game, especially, one of your top defensive guys in Billy Bowman, right? I think it's somewhere in between. And I definitely think from what I've heard from the players themselves about player-only meetings, being extremely vocal, these senior leaders stepping up, I think we're going to see a lot more of the freshmen on the defense for OU, whether that's Kobe McKenzie, and he's going to have something to prove in this game. Robert Spears-Jennings, who I don't know why he hasn't been playing, but I feel like we're going to see him a little bit in this game. And I don't think Texas is going to have answers for some of those guys. I do think this Oklahoma defense is going to come out ready to play. It might not look like it in the first couple series, but I think as the game settles down, you're going to see this Oklahoma defense settle down and be ready to go in there and be dominant.
So you want to know where I'm going to push back on you? They're not playing for a reason. You can be fast, but if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to make fast mistakes. And fast mistakes is a great way to bust coverages. Brent Venables' defenses are intricate. If you don't know what you're doing, you're a liability. And to say, and I get it, because I've seen a lot of people say, well, we need to play the guys that are more talented. They don't know what's going on. So if they mess up their job, it snowballs. Now you have an absolute catastrophe. Now, I think there's an argument to be made that what we've seen the past 2 games has been an absolute catastrophe. So what difference does it make at this point? You can
only go up from here.
Well, you've given up more offense in 2 games than the top 10 offenses or the top 10 defenses in college football have given up all year. Right. And so here's where I think it gets tough, because even when we look at linebacker, they're going to attack Oklahoma at linebacker. They're going to attack them at linebacker again and again, whether it's through Jatavian Sanders or Bijan Robinson, Keelan Robinson. How is Brent Venables going to stop that? That's a big question I have for Oklahoma, because whenever I look at this, I think Oklahoma's best chance in this game is taking what Texas does best out of the game.
So Dillon Gabriel's walking out onto the field. He doesn't have pads on at all, so he's not starting. He's not playing.
Well, even if he was playing, the analysis I'm going to give is the exact same. You got to nullify Steve Sarkisian, because here's one thing I do know, man. regardless of who we say Oklahoma's defense is right now, they're genuinely one of the worst defenses in the nation at stopping the run right now. And you're going up against Bijan. And that's going to be tough. I am so curious as to if we're going to see OU come out in these 3-man fronts again. Because against TCU, I'm not questioning scheme. I'm not going to question coaching. The one thing that was the most puzzling I've seen maybe all of this season is in 3rd and 1 against TCU, PG. Y'all came out in a 3-man front with everybody 6 yards off in coverage. And I was like, okay, you're just telling TCU take the first down. I don't know what's going on. Hank says linebacker coverage has been a problem all season. And Hank, that's what I mean. Even with your starting linebackers, that's where I would have attacked you this season. Last season, if you talk to Chris, when we'd get off the thing and he'd be like, oh, well, how would you go after Oklahoma? Linebackers. I'd isolate the linebackers in coverage, get them in one-on-one, have them moving, have them falling for eye candy, and slip in a wide receiver right behind them. Easier said than done because they've been better this year. They're better this year than they were last year. It's just that they don't know the defense yet. I think Oklahoma's trending in the right direction, but I just think when you look at this Texas offense, man, they've got a lot of ways to hurt you, and they showed that against my team, Alabama.
I hear you on the linebacker part, but listen, David Agwebu is extremely smart, and we've seen it all season because he has been able to piece guys together on that defense and tell them where they need to be. I think David Agwebu has a stellar game this year because he's been one of the stars for Oklahoma this year on the defensive side. So again, you have Danny Stutzman, and you know Danny Stutzman can be a superstar. Deshaun White, well, I mean, if Deshaun White shows up,
but that's how they're attacking you, PG. I'm going to just let you know, those 3 names right there, like whenever you came in there that day and Jay and I were watching the All-22, that's who they're going after.
Okay.
They're isolating those guys,
give them a different
using them, and then running right through the hole. That's why that game against Kansas State, Agwebu was on a wide receiver. Deshaun White came to cover the wide receiver. Nobody talked. Danny Stutzman is lined up right over the center. There's nobody to the right of the center. All 3 of your cheetah, your linebackers, are to the left of the center. Everybody runs left. Play runs the opposite direction. Huge game. And that's miscommunications. And that's what I mean about the intricacies of this Brent Venables defense. I have no doubt that the athleticism is there. You're right. Agwebu, I think he's one of the freakiest players in college football that really doesn't get recognition. I think Danny Stutzman is a certified star. I think he's going to be incredible. But this is what I mean when I'm talking about, like earlier when we said, well, what about the younger players? This defense is not an easy defense to learn. It is very complex. It's very difficult.
Yeah, I understand that, but I do think there is a chance that you could see the Oklahoma defense get simplified. And I do think you see the play calling maybe be pulled a little bit from Ted Roof. And I think you see this game, Brent Venables call a little bit more of those plays, and you see him doing a little bit more of this on the defensive side of the ball, milking the cow, right? And Hank, I see you said Gabriel's padded up, but I saw it on TV, and multiple people have said that he is not.
They showed to Hank's credit, they showed a lot of B-roll of him passing, and they mixed it in right when everybody else was taking the field, and they made it look like, because right when he said that, I saw maybe a minute before the B-roll. I'd bet money I know exactly the footage Hank is talking about. I'd bet money I know the exact footage he's talking about.
Yeah, it did look listen, weird. Dylan Gabriel's got a career in acting, but listen, I've got
real.
Yeah, honestly, depending on where this game goes, if Bevel plays, I don't think OU has a shot. I think if you put out General Booty or Nick Evers, I think there is a little bit of differency there because the Texas, I don't think defense is going to know how to scheme for them. But ultimately, I think Texas is probably going to come out on top of this, but I don't think it's going to be a blowout like some people think.
I don't know that it will be, but here's the thing. I think it could be. Because if Texas comes out quick and you don't have an answer to stop them, it brings up a question you asked a while ago. How does Oklahoma respond once they face adversity? You would hope in this game it would be, well.
So far they're playing well. Looks like they're tackling well. But hey, thank you all for tuning in. Y'all can find this later on the
Good play by
podcast
Stutzman. Yeah, you're right.
platforms. Yeah,
Good play by
Ty and I are going to hop off here and we're going to watch it. I'm sure you guys will be able to find us later on Ty's page, breaking down it, whether it's later tonight or tomorrow. But until then, we will see y'all next time.
All right.